Welcome to Mercer Moments in American History, a program dedicated to both current events that impact all of us, but also to major moments in American history that for some reason have been erased and deleted from our classrooms, from our textbooks, where our goal is to bring those back. Today's program is part 2, where a question is asked: energy independence, United States or Russia? We made you the president, and you're hearing from all your different secretaries and getting their opinions to make a final decision as to what's best, not just for America, but for the world. My name is Ken Mercer. I'm known as the Minister of Education. Why I'm blessed with a reputation of standing for the rights of moms and dads as an elected state official for 16 years, always fighting for the rights of parents to see what's going on in the classroom, for a clear and transparent process. Your right to see what's being taught to your precious sons and daughters. Always begin every session by asking first 2 things. Please hit like and subscribe anytime throughout the program. Let our sponsors know that Mercer Moments in American History is making a difference. And I always give a shout out to one state. Today is the state of Oklahoma, the Sooner State. And I chose, as you know, part 1 was Texas Tech, which encompasses a lot of students from Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Colorado, but also Oklahoma. I have not forgotten that during World War II, a lesson is not taught anymore, our allies fighting the National Socialists, the Nazis, we had a problem of energy. And we brought together England, Canada, Australia, the United States, and the remnants of France and Poland and Czechoslovakia tried to get back and try to take back the 12 countries the Nazis had taken over. We had a problem of energy. People don't talk about the energy for our boats, our planes, our trucks, our transportation, everything. And it is my belief that actually forgotten heroes, what saved the world from Nazi domination, were the oil fields of Texas and a place called Oklahoma. Pretty brave statement. But I believe if you look back in history, you'll find out that we're in a pickle. We didn't have energy to mount an invasion to retake Europe from the occupied Nazi armies, the National Socialists. But it is my belief our world, our nation and our world was saved with the oil fields of places called Texas and Oklahoma. You can debate that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Again, you as president, remind your cabinet, all your secretaries, every department, that this decision basically is a go or no go. If you decide it's best to have a pipeline for the United States of America, to have energy independence for the United States, that means no to Russia. The world right now, and we hear from our Secretary of the Interior, can probably not handle at this time both pipelines. But if you decide yes to Russia, yes to allow Russia to have a pipeline, a major pipeline, yes to Russian energy independence, that means no to the United States of America. So the first person up today is the all-important Secretary of the Interior. What does it mean to our environment? You ready? Well, let's begin. The Secretary of the Interior tells you that their main thing is to protect our natural resources from both short-term and long-term harm. Protect our precious natural resources, and that's a key item. That's in the media all the time. But they stress the fact, the Secretary of Interior, Mr. President, this is not just the United States. This is the world. If we're looking at the environment, climate change, whatever term you have, it impacts the whole world. If we're going to have one or the other, we have to be fair as to what's going on. And here's what's fair. Right now, Mr. President, our population is around 330 million people, and it's pretty much flattened out. We're not having huge growth, but we're at 330 million people right now. The problem is with Russia and her pipeline and her chief ally, China, well, they're together almost 1.4 billion. 1.4 billion with a B. So we're talking 3.5 times that of the United States, and they are an emerging, growing economy. More needs. So here we are pretty stable in our uses with 330 million people. Here they are 1.4 billion people, and they're growing with more energy needs. So right there, you have to consider that for what's best for the world. Secondly, Mr. President, the United States if you listen to the UN, the United Nations forgets to tell us that our carbon footprint on the world is about 14%, which seems large, but the carbon footprint of Russia and her allies, or just Russia and China alone, their carbon footprint is between 34 and 36%. Again, 14% America, 34, 36% of Russia and her allies, in particular China. That's a huge difference. Considering the fact they're an emerging, growing nations and will have more and more energy needs, what does that mean for the carbon footprint of the world? If you decide for Russia and no to the United States, what have we done? But also, Mr. President, there's a third item very concerned. Russia's chief ally and probably the chief proponent of the United Nations for this Russian pipeline is China. China has already opened over 1,140 operational working coal plants. For some reason, the media is missing that, sir. Over 1,100 operational working coal plants in China and more to come. So knowing that, plus the pipeline on that side of the world, adds a huge concern about natural resources and protecting natural resources, protecting the environment. Again, this is not just a U.S. decision. This is a decision that impacts the world. And again, if we have energy independence, we can better plan our own mixture. Our plan for the future is we look at what we're going to do with wind or solar power or nuclear power or coal or fossil fuels. And as we mix that, if we go down in one where we increase it, we can manage our own plan. And as my friend from the Secretary of Energy said, that we're not beholden to other countries who might blackmail us, politically blackmail us, or keep us beholden or keep us hostage to their thoughts about prices of energy and or supply. They can cut supply whenever they want. So this is interesting because the media is attacking the interior environment, but if it's the environment of the world, which it should be this decision, and it's the United States versus Russia, without any hesitation whatsoever, knowing again our carbon footprint is 14%, Russia and her allies together are at least 36%, it's pretty clear the Department of Interior says for the environment of our world, we choose the United States of America. Thank you, Mr. President. The Department of Transportation is next, and we have also a colleague report from the Secretary of Agriculture. They cannot be here today, but a very similar concern. As my colleague mentioned, Department of Labor, the impact on jobs, well, maybe you forgot about the jobs of transportation, the jobs for trucking, for boats, et cetera, for airlines, of transporting our important goods across the United States of America and to some of our allies. It's a key factor. And the key cost of transportation, the key cost is that of energy, but it's twofold. If we're waiting for energy from foreign countries, we're at their beck and call. We, as one of my colleagues said, held hostage to their supply and demand and their pricing. So they can slow down and have slowed down in the past our transportation of goods and services, especially that of agriculture. It has impacted our cost and our timing, and probably most important, our cost, which has also been another factor, as my friend from the Department of Commerce mentioned, in terms of inflation. Inflation, the cost of fuel and not having our own fuel and being dependent on foreign countries, and frankly, some of those who do not like the United States of America and hold us hostage for that energy cost. But again, it's jobs through transportation energy. It's also cost of goods and services. And the Secretary of Agriculture wanted to add in also the cost of food, inflation, the high rising cost of food. Energy independence is huge. It impacts everything we have in America, transportation, and that of food and agriculture. So these two departments, Mr. President, without any hesitation whatsoever, say, please decide a pipeline for America, energy independence for the United States of America. Well, Mr. President, next up is your Secretary of State. Let's hear from them. Mr. President, obviously our allies are nervous to speak out up front. On the record, they say they have no preference, but behind closed doors, they do have preference. They prefer to buy from us. They trust us more than they would trust Russia. And there's a couple of reasons for that. But let me just say, for the Secretary of State, obviously, if they're buying oil and gas from us, we have a surplus. we can sell to them. That's a great thing. To have not just meet our needs, but have a surplus to sell at fair prices to our allies. But otherwise, they'd be forced to buy their energy needs from a place called Russia. They don't trust Russia, her allies, China, many folks in the Middle East, people who do not like the United States of America. And quietly behind the scenes, my allies are already concerned. If Russia has a pipeline, they have more money to fund things like they've already invaded Ukraine. If they decide next to build their army up even more and then invade Poland and other countries, just like we saw the Nazis during World War II. That's the concern behind closed doors of our partners, our allies. They're hesitant to say much because if Russia wins this and we do not, then where are they at? Well, behind closed doors, they rather buy from us. They know we'd be fair in pricing negotiations, but they also feel that Russia will use that money to fund other things like invasions of Ukraine and Poland. That's the report from the Secretary of State, Mr. President. And now I yield to my friend from the Department of Defense. Mr. President, I'm just very thankful for everything we've heard so far, but I want to say that energy independence is national security. Energy independence is national security. And I remind you again, as you said up front in the first meeting, we'd forgotten that in World War II, when we were the last country, the United States, to come and enter World War II, and our allies at that time was Australia, Canada, and England. Everyone else had been conquered. And the remnants of the army from France and Poland, Czechoslovakia, to lead the war, to defeat the Nazis, had already taken over 12 countries in Europe, already invaded 12 countries to defeat them and liberate France and liberate Europe. But one key item was missing. Our allies, again, United States, England, Canada, Australia, and the remnants of France, Poland, etc., was energy. We needed energy, Mr. President, for our boats, for our planes, for our transportation, our trucks, for our tanks. What saved us in World War II, many folks, as my colleagues stressed earlier, and I agree with that, it was the oil fields of places like Texas and Oklahoma. Unsung heroes. The energy that they produced for us let us defeat the Nazis. Now, Mr. President, I will tell you more about that because, we had a front, not just the European theater, but also the Pacific theater with Japan at war then. And we needed energy for both sides. And if we not had those oil fields in Texas and Oklahoma, what would we have done? I think you know already the Department of Defense is saying yes to the United States, no to Russia. And I need to remind everyone here, right now we already have a war with Russia and Ukraine. And what if Russia decides to, as my colleague mentioned, even invade Poland or other states? Then we need energy for that. Israel and Iran. Iran has not been a friend of us or Israel. What if we have energy needs for that side of the country? North Korea and South Korea, the saber rattling there of North Korea, what if they again invade South Korea? China and Taiwan. You hear the names. Hear the names. They're not familiar? Russia, Iran, North Korea, China. All four of those have a chance of starting the war somewhere else, and we would need energy needs either for ourselves or for our friends over there. And then finally, Mr. President, our own U.S. border, the invasion we have at the U.S. border, the energy needs we have to protect our border and defend our country, to keep allowing, of course, legal immigration. Everyone here is for legal immigration. The problem is illegal immigration that's hurting our country and who's coming across the border. Again, I remind you, the countries we're talking about are fear. Department of Defense. It's Russia invading Ukraine or Poland. It's Iran and their friends invading Israel. It's North Korea invading South Korea. It's China invading Taiwan. And it's the U.S. border. The Department of Defense says energy independence, a pipeline for America, Mr. President. Thank you. Well, there you go, my friends. We've had all the department. Oh, I see a hand in the back of the Department of Education. We actually didn't invite you. We thought you wouldn't have a dog in this fight. So the Department of Education, let me see if I have your report here. Oh, what is your, well, the Department of Education is concerned because what's been happening in our college universities and in some of our colleges throughout America, some of the books and textbooks and curriculum, which are clearly anti-Israel and anti-America. And who's getting the money to fund those things? Last 40 years have been over 55 billion with a B. 55 billion of traceable donations to our college and universities. Now, not all of that's from the Middle East, a lot of from China, other places, but 55 billion to our college, and that's the money we can trace. And that's not money for tuition and books when they send 5,000 students over here from one country. No, that's money in addition to that. 55 billion in the last 40 years from countries to over 270 universities in the United States. And the concerned Department of Education, we want to investigate where does that money go to? What about the money we cannot trace? And apparently 75% of that money is not marked for anything, which is strange. It's not earmarked, but so, well, okay, then where is it going? We've seen recently in our country, inexplicable throughout universities where both students and professors are professing their hatred of both Israel and the United States. Mr. President, it's pretty clear. It's like an equation. If they hate Israel, they hate the United States. If they hate the United States, they hate Israel. But where is this money coming from? Is it coming from oil and gas countries? And they're using a revenue that we have paid them because we're not energy independent. We're buying oil and gas from them, and they're coming back, and they're investing in our colleges and universities. The question Department of Education should ask, are they also investing perhaps in textbook companies? What the textbook companies put out there about America and about Israel. Are they also investing in lobbyists? We're just asking the question, Mr. President, the Department of Education. When you look at some of the state boards of education throughout our nation, there are lots of groups coming forth, experts, and they're pretty much testifying as anti-American, anti-free market, anti-free enterprise, anti-Israel, and they're pushing that curriculum and their standards into every state of our nation. And the question is, from the Department of Education, sir, is that a result of our dependence on foreign oil, foreign energy? We've seen an outrageous rise in physical attacks on American Jewish students in the schools, in the dormitories, even the subways. And again, the question is, are we giving money to companies because we are not energy independent? Are we giving money to countries that we know do not have America's best interest at heart? And they're taking that money, the profits, and they're reinvesting it into our system of education. They're reinvesting into American education with foreign oil profits and promoting an agenda that is clearly anti-America, clearly anti-Israel, and clearly anti-free market, free enterprise. That's the question, sir, from the Department of Education. And we believe that no matter what the decision is today on energy, whether it be Russia or the United States for a pipeline, that should be investigated. Thank you, Mr. President. Well, there you go. You're the President of the United States. You heard from everyone. You've heard about energy, how energy independence is so important. On the other side, you heard about national security. Secretary of Defense, that energy independence is national security. Our Secretary of State, what it means to our allies, the fear that Russia and her friends might use that money to do things we wouldn't like, to invest or to invade, use that money to invest in the invasion of other countries. We've heard from Secretary of Labor about jobs and commerce, about the impact on inflation, how important that, and coupled with that, we heard from Transportation and Agriculture, the same fact about the cost of goods and services is impacted by the cost of energy and having to wait for foreign suppliers when they decide how much it will cost and when they will meet our needs. We even heard from the Department of Education a concern, are they using the profits and the money we spend that we send to foreign nations, are they using those profits to try to change the ideology, change the curriculum and textbooks in our classrooms throughout America? You are president. You decide. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about what's called the elephant in the room. By far, the decision has been weighed by the media. They're concerned about the environment, about our natural resources, which, of course, we're all concerned about that. And we're blessed. We have the media as a good watchdog in our country as to what's happening. In fact, I would suggest we're abundantly blessed. We have national groups, federal investigators and regulators and watchdogs. We have states each have their own Department of Energy and their watchdogs, their regulators, their inspectors. Even have counties and some cities that have that, not to mention we have private organizations and, of course, our media who are all working together to make sure the most important thing we have in a democracy is what I call clear and transparent. Clear and transparent process. If you're concerned about the environment, again, this decision is not just the United States, it's the world. There's only going to be, the world says, one pipeline, either United States or Russia. So you look at all the things we have here, and my point is, those watchdogs, regulators we have at federal, state, county, city, private organizations, in a place called Russia, they have none of that. None of that. Ask the media who's coming down hard on this, the United States media, how easy is it for you to have eyes on, to inspect, to be a watchdog in the United States, versus how easy is it for you to be a watchdog in a place called Russia and her allies, to watch and see what's happening? That's an overwhelming concern. Again, this decision is not American, it's worldwide. Which is best for the world? Who's going to best protect the environment, the United States or Russia? And finally, I have to ask, as you all know, that the administration, the presidential administration of 2021, actually had this decision and reversed course of a previous administration. Bottom line, decided no to United States pipeline, yes to a Russian pipeline. And to me, that's just unconscionable, inexplicable. How could you choose Russia over the United States? And of course, my opposition would say, Mr. Mercer, that's not that easy. There's a much more nuances, political ramifications involved. And those are all great words, what I call the University of Gobbledygook. But the reality is, to most Americans, the bottom line is it was a decision. Do we have American energy independence, American jobs, and a hedge against inflation? Or do we allow it to go to Russia? And whatever your political feelings are, forget about that. The bottom line is the answer was no to the United States having a new pipeline in our world, and yes to a place called Russia. This is Ken Mercer, Mercer Moments in American History. I know that these last two sessions were different, but there's a discussion that needs to be made because we touched so many facets. And if you saw, it wasn't just past stuff, it's also current events that impact all of us and future events. This is an important program, these last two programs on energy independence, the United States or Russia. I hope you enjoy that. As always, I ask you, please hit the like and subscribe anytime in a program. Let our sponsors know that Mercer Moments in American History is making a difference. And today's shout out was to the state of Oklahoma. Next time it could be your state. But always pray for those college students, those men and women who love America. Believe me, in today's political climate of our colleges and universities, they in particular, the young men and women who love America, they need our encouragement, they need our prayers. And finally, I want to close off and remind you that I firmly believe the strength of America, our strength, it's always brought us back together. Sometimes maybe we're going down a different path, but what always brought us back together to do the right thing has been our faith and our values coupled with our worship. I believe our faith and values in America with our incredible worship at our churches and synagogues makes us so strong, invincible, unconquerable. And please, I love to close with this. Please never forget that a place called United States of America, our United States of America, in God, we still trust. right here in America, in God, we still trust. Thank you and blessings.